Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Reframing Eye Care podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Laura Goldberg. Thank you, Laura, for joining the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Maria. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Today's we're going to talk about, the ultimate guide of how optometrists can really elevate their professional journey. It's an insightful podcast, how to reveal secrets and leverage, every facet of optometry, just not in practice, but also being a well-rounded, successful eye care professional, from clinical expertise to business. And we're here to unlock like the full spectrum of opportunity in optometry and help shape, a fulfilling career beyond the exam lane. So when I thought about this podcast, I thought, let me bring on Dr. Goldberg. She's been instrumental in this and in her career, and a lot of optometrists can be inspired by the advice and learn from this.
Yeah, definitely.
For those of you that do not know her, she's a private practice in Baltimore, graduated from NECO in 2016, completed a primary care ocular disease residency at the VA, and went to optometry school, completed also MS Masters in Vision Science. She specializes in myopia and management and specialty contact lenses and dry eye, and has done a lot of clinical trials in the industry, a key opinion leader for Natural View and biotissue, speaks at local conferences, and has been a writer in the industry as well. Recently, Young Optometrist of the Year for MOA, and instrumental in, advocating for our profession and serving on various committees. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
So give us some insight. What are some ways that, you can grow yourself in the optometry world?
Yeah. So it's funny because, when I was in school, the only path that they really laid out for you was you're going to go into private practice, potentially work at a hospital VA, but a lot of it was if you wanted to make a good living, you're going to get out of school, work for someone, and then either buy in or own your own practice. And I had no idea that there was any other type of avenue in the optometry world. I always enjoyed writing. I actually wrote some blogs for NECO while I was there, and I didn't know that could potentially be something I could do beyond my time at NECO. But actually, once I got out of NECO, I made a contact, Matt Geller, who runs Eyes on Eye Care, and I was able to write for him. And it's been almost 6 years now. Just when he very started, I also started with him. It's a great outlet. So then once that kind of opened my eyes to, there might be more than just being and practicing patients every day. And, it gets a little mundane after a while. I've only been out for about 6 years, so I can't complain too much, but I am definitely feeling a little bit of that itch now to kind of do something besides just seeing patients every day. So I actually reached out to a friend who I realized was working as like a consultant for Alcon. And I was like, hey, wait a minute. Do you get paid for this, or is this just volunteer? And basically she said that this was her permanent position. She was like a medical liaison. I had no idea what that even meant. No one ever told me about that when I was in school. And that you can get paid like a living wage if you don't want to see patients. So that kind of opened my eyes to reaching out to other companies and being like a consultant, as you said, for biotissue, Natural View. Those are two companies that I am passionate about, and I do work with their products quite a bit. So that was really eye-opening and something that I was happy to find that I could do alongside of patient care. And I love research. Both my parents are research scientists, but they were like, do not go into research full time. You can do it on the side. So I thought, well, how am I going to do research and see patients? It doesn't either have to work for a university, which I didn't really know if I wanted to do, or I had to get my PhD and really not see patients as much as I wanted to, because I am a people person. I do want to interact with people daily. So I actually found out you could do clinical trials for companies that I've been grown relationships with. And I think that's a really unique aspect that I do not, and I think it is growing more and more in the field. It's a little bit difficult to get into, and unless you kind of know people and work with the company itself. But I found that if you just ask, hey, are you guys, I like research. Are you guys do you guys need any clinical trials? What do you work on right now? And they would actually give you some money, like grant money also to run those trials at your office. So it's just been really rewarding the last few years being able to branch out to those different avenues of optometry.
So for doctors that want to stay connected in clinical care and research after school, like what are some recommendations? Because it's hard at first because you're just starting to see patients, higher, like, large patient base, things like that. But then after a while, I mean, I get it. You kind of get in a rhythm and like, is there anything more? That's what's been passionate for me, is to do more in the industry, because I can't just stay in the exam lane. So what is some advice for some young optometrists right out of school?
I think, so I actually mentor a young optometrist at NECO right now, and she's amazing. I see her getting involved with the student stuff right off the bat. And also she's already like a liaison for Johnson & Johnson, which is way ahead of what I was at that time. But those are the connections that really help to build yourself even when you're out of school. So starting in school, being a part of the AOSA, those organizations that, you know, will continue on after school. That's a great way to kind of get involved with companies outside of that. And then I would say just asking your local reps who come in, because they're in the know, and they're the ones who usually help me get connected to the right person who does the clinical trials. And, you know, it's all about just putting your feelers out. They may say no, but a lot of times over time, once they you show the use of their product or their passion for the product, they're always willing to take free data. I mean, that's just the truth. Getting paid for it, it probably takes a little bit more experience, and you have to show some good results. But honestly, they just sending in photos, exam notes, helping the industry to figure out if their product is working or not. I've even done some newer products that haven't even been out in the market yet. Just they love to just get it tested out in the field. Those are some ways that you can really get involved early on.
Yeah, just trying things out for experience because you want to do it. What are some other advice you can give for doctors that want to get started as a KOL, writing, speaking? I know there's different platforms that, you know, welcome young docs, like you said, Eyes on Eye Care. I know Women in Optometry has been a great platform. You know, I'm happy to have young, you know, ODs on my podcast. Give us some advice on that as well for whatever you're passionate about. Some want podcasts, some want speaking, some want writing. Just people have to find what they like.
Yeah, definitely. So being like a blogger for NECO, that kind of already fortunately led me in the gateway to writing for Eyes on Eye Care. But you don't have to have that initial connection. I actually, if I find someone like a colleague who's interested in writing, I'll send the contact info to the editor there, and then they are happy to have them just fill out a form. And, you know, you can shoot any ideas that you want for Eyes on Eye Care. They can give you ideas, and they pay you quite well to write them. So you don't have to write them for free, because it is time consuming. And that's always been, it's kind of something that I've enjoyed. I found that I've actually learned a lot too by writing for these platforms, because you have to do research, and sometimes you're studying the latest innovations. And that's been really helpful for my knowledge base in optometry. What was the other part of the question that you had?
So speaking, and just being KOL, right? They're all kind of intertwined, the different things, I think, in the industry. I think you have to do kind of a little bit of everything. And what I found in my experience too is you kind of have to give to the industry to get back. It's not necessarily to get paid, but more to make an impact and change things. And maybe your thing, sometimes it's doing the work, you know, to get the experience, but also to kind of show, you know, the decision makers, you know, what you're capable of. And I think different perspectives are always good. And I think that's why the KOL industry needs to continue to evolve and change over the years to get different perspectives, but also with the new grads coming out, right? Who can they relate to? So, those things too, I think are important.
Yeah, it's interesting because I do feel that some big companies do poach students right out of school, maybe ones that have been involved with them, like I said before, while they're in school, or ones that have a specific niche in residency. Like I know that they're very passionate about taking young doctors now and kind of mentoring them and allowing them to get their foothold. But I would say for me, it was not easy starting my KOL journey. I would say it took me about 2 years to really show that I built the relationships. I did give a couple unpaid talks for them to kind of show them the crowd that I could bring and the exposure. So you're right. You do need to do a little bit of the legwork initially, kind of pay your dues. But then after that, I'm like, hey, you know what? I've done this. I brought this amount of people. How about we set up kind of an agreement? And I actually, for the agreement, I reached out to someone at Eyes and Eye Care who was also a KOL, and he was able to walk me through the process of if the agreement was good or not, what should I expect? So that was very helpful as well. And then the last point for speaking, that's probably been the hardest. It takes a while, it takes experience. I started by just speaking at my local optometry meetings. I actually am the president of the Anne Arundel Society, so I couldn't find anyone for one meeting. So I decided just to give my talk that I already had for myopia control. And that kind of got my name out there a little bit, some exposure. People like the talk. And so that kind of branched out to one of my friends reaching out for me to give a talk at her local conference in New Jersey. So I'm in Maryland, but I'll be traveling out to New Jersey next January. So slowly but surely, I think the speaking is definitely the hardest, but just putting your name out there, and like Maria, like you did for me, connecting me to the right people is essential.
It's essential. Yeah, that's important. We need to work together to elevate the profession and that. But from my experience over the years, you got to do your due diligence. You got to do that. But you got to also learn when to, step away sometimes. Sometimes some will take advantage, unfortunately. And some things are political in optometry. So just knowing when to step away and just ask for advice from other doctors and things like that. Some people are easier to work with than others, and sometimes it has nothing to do with you. So, knowing that and knowing when to step away and say no sometimes, and sometimes being, doing things with no benefit for your time too is important. So, knowing that. So not a lot of people say it, I'll say it. But knowing to say no sometimes is important, and knowing that there might be another avenue. So that's important too. So you've been, as a local, do you drive in the industry, in your practice, local community, state associations? What can ODs do? Because I know AOA is I think being involved is very important. You are a leader in your area and at the national level with AOA. And, I met you at the Leadership Institute at AOA, and you're already a leader, but you thirst for knowledge to get more information, network. I think that's important. I think we all need to develop and evolve. And that's why I start taking leadership courses too, and other things too, because I think as a leader you need to learn and see what else is out there too with other doctors and what as doctors are facing throughout the country.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. Like that one, as I said before, in terms of advocacy, starting at the AOSA level and then moving into your state association, I find it extremely valuable. I feel sometimes the younger generation, it's hard to get them involved because they want to just come out and work and make money. I know there's a lot of loans. I totally understand that. But first of all, the networking and the community that I make is invaluable. Like I've made some of the best, most supportive colleagues and friends ever being a part of the Maryland State Association. And then we even went to Capitol Hill this year, which was amazing, being so close to kind of advocate for our rights. And if you don't have, as frustrating as it can be sometimes, if you don't have people pushing for our rights, no one's going to do it. And then we're just going to be left behind from the other states. So you just have to keep going, keep putting yourself out there, keep fighting for your rights, because honestly, I think a lot of people take for granted how much work and effort the AOA puts in to keep us moving forward.
Yeah, the advancement of our profession is super important. And I think it starts with us, each individual. And some might not have time, maybe, but they can donate to the AOA. They can do volunteer services from the house, things like that. And as you know, and get experience. So when they are ready, and maybe the kid's a little older, they already have those connections and they can help a little more. I think it is helping the next generation of optometrists. We've come a long way in optometry. It is a legislative profession. And, scope of practice is so different in different states. And I think, the issue in Florida with that bill, I think was really, ignited a lot of optometrists to come together. And that's one of the great things, I think, with AOA being involved, is a common mission to help our profession, and it helps everybody, right? It's not that competitive landscape with physicians and things like that, but that great collaboration for the greater good of optometry. What is your, why do you think it's so important for us to advance our profession?
I mean, just like any other profession, if we don't, first of all, there's not enough ophthalmologists. That's just the facts coming out of school. So the burden of patient care is going to eventually fall more on us, whether the ophthalmologists want to fight it or not. It's just not possible. So we have to be prepared to step up and take over some of these procedures and patients that we normally wouldn't see 10 years ago. I mean, 40 years ago, we weren't even dilating, and now we're like doing lasers in the Midwest in certain states. So I just think if we don't push forward, we run the risk of running backwards sometimes too. And that's never a good thing. So unfortunately, there's a little push-pull between ophthalmologists and optometrists. And I think that when we finally learn to kind of work together with them and realize that we're not trying to get into your turf, we're just trying to help, take care of the patient population as best we can. You can do the surgeries. That's what you want to do. We can help step up and do other stuff. That's important. And we need to, be willing to keep asking and helping more.
Thank you. That's great advice. For ODs that want to get involved, that don't have time, how can they get involved? I know I talked to a lot of young ODs. They have student loans. They need to work. They have a mortgage. They have a young family. How do they get involved? I mean, and still be involved?
Sure. Yeah. So one thing is, some of the state association can be expensive. I know that wasn't your main question. I'll get to that. But a lot of times, even corporate practices will pay and cover those dues. So that lessens the burden, because I know they're worried about paying off the loans. Secondly, you don't have to take a very demanding position initially. So you can do anything from just being a committee member to, working with someone else for the state society, helping set up meetings, or even just helping someone else volunteering once in a while. So they're willing to take whatever you can give, and you may be surprised and find out that you would want to give more and more the more you get involved.
Yeah, I think you get involved, you see the passion, you become inspired, and you want to do that, right? I mean, people can carve out half an hour a week, right, on your lunch break or something like that. And sometimes it's just an email, it's that, or maybe it's, a weekend a year. So there are ways to be involved, but just the networking and, just getting mentorship from other ODs and who've gone through it. And then the passion, to advance our profession, I think is important. So I want to thank you, Dr. Goldberg, for coming on the podcast, for sharing your advice, for being a mentor in the industry, a KOL, inspiring optometrists to do better and advance our profession with your leadership with, local and national level with AOA.
Thank you, Maria. I really appreciate it.